Greetings and welcome to a quick lesson on cloud computing and network security. So we're going to start off with cloud computing. What is it? So the cloud. Most people hear that and they're like, is it really a cloud? Well, not really, right? So there are a bunch of computers that connect to this thing, but what it really is, this cloud, is a bunch of other computers called servers, right? That's what the cloud is. Now, the key to understand about it is these computers aren't with you, right? So that's why they call it the cloud, because it goes out to the internet, and then these devices are all over the place that you can connect to, and you can connect to from everywhere as well. What does it really look like, right? Well, it looks like this. Just rows and rows and rows of these servers and hard drives, all nice and air conditioned, so they can run your video games remotely, they can run apps remotely. And if you see from this last piece, again, this whole concept of files or applications stored on someone else's computer, right? That is the cloud, right? Someone else is storing your files, someone else is running your program, someone else is connecting you to something else, right? That is the cloud, right? Now, there's different things that the cloud can do, and a lot more than this, but this concept of as a service. So software as a service would be they run software for you, and it can be entirely, a lot of schools will do this because they don't have the computing power. You can run computer-aided design programs and more sophisticated software that you don't need to write. Google Drive, Google Docs, probably a better one, right? Platform as a service kind of combines stuff, right? You need more of it, all of it together. It's the whole platform. Now, infrastructure as a service is kind of what it sounds like. It's just the hardware for you. So you don't have to own it, you don't have to manage it. You're paying them to have the devices, but you're putting your own software on it, right? You manage all of those pieces onto it. So again, you don't own any of it. You are just essentially renting these different services, right? This is as a service concept. And there are more. You can do some more research. But these are some of the major ones. Now, what about public versus private cloud? Really boils down to, do you own it? No, it's probably public. Yes, then it's probably private, right? Now, thinking of it from a big company standpoint, they could have one central location, one server area or whatever, and then everyone across the company can use that as their cloud. They connect it. It's technically the company's, but at the same time, it's not that offices or not that thing, right? So the company owns this secondary site that does everything for you, the software, the platform, whatever it might be. And yeah, you can set up your own. You can go ahead and install stuff on a computer that allows you to connect and manage everything remotely. So anywhere you're going, you can connect back to this computer. You can have your own private cloud as well. We'll go into more detail on that in another lesson. All right, now we're going to go with some advanced network security that wasn't covered in a previous lesson. One big one is the Demilitarized Zone, and now that we're really getting into networking, this will become more apparent, right? We started to talk about what a firewall is, and this is a very simplified view of how this looks, but this is the basic concept, right? To separate internal only, right? Internal only devices from public facing, like a web server that needs to connect to a database server, right? So these things the internet connects to. So people come off the internet and they connect to your web server and they get information back. You don't want people to be able to see all of this other stuff over there. So therefore you have what's called this demilitarized zone, right? It's still in your building. However, it's not connected to this. And I've seen some setups where they have a firewall here. It goes, right, and they have another firewall over here. So that's the concept of demilitarized zone. a lot of times you'll see it, the DMZ. It allows the public to still get to a lot of your systems, but not all of your systems. Mobile, let's face it, if you have Wi-Fi, then you got to worry about mobile security. Some of the big things you can do, besides limiting Wi-Fi, is, and these recommendations go for both individual and companies, right? So if people are on have policies that say this, but from an individual perspective as well, make sure you have strong passwords. I've seen a video where if you have a 4-digit password within 16 hours, even with waiting 30 seconds, they can get into your device, right? Use the biometrics. Don't make it your only stand-fall. There are ways around it. If your voice is what lets you in, someone records your voice, they can get in, right? Avoid public Wi-Fi. If you connect across the Wi-Fi, you might accidentally connect over someone else's Wi-Fi, number one, or as I mentioned, you're just connected to a bunch of devices with other people and they can see your device much more readily. So between that and connecting to a fake Wi-Fi, beware of apps. Google tries a little bit, Apple tries a little bit harder to make sure the apps are okay, but you've watched the news at all or do any research on malware in apps, it does sneak by. And then make sure you have mobile device encryption, so if anyone does get your device and takes it apart, everything on it is encrypted so they can't actually view it, right? So these are some things to, again, save yourself, save your company information. These are all things to think about from both sides of the spectrum. And finally, IoT, Internet of Things. All right, here's some best practices we'll go over. We'll talk about some major things. This is an interesting one. Assign an administrator of things, i.e. have someone have at least part of their job, if not all of their job, making sure that this is everything below is done. Check for patches and updates. That's standard for everything, but IoT devices tend to fall for things quicker and don't have as many patches, so make sure you're keeping those up to date. This is a huge one. A lot of botnet attacks happen because people are using the default password, so make sure you change the default password. Strong, unique for all accounts. Prioritize Wi-Fi security, right? These IoT devices are going to connect via Wi-Fi. So someone breaks into your Wi-Fi, they can connect directly to your devices and then easily compromise them. Monitor. This is great network security, period, but monitor what the network is and then the device and on a regular, like what you would expect it to do, and then if it behaves differently, you might suspect you're being attacked. Apply network segmentation, right? Put the IoT devices on their own network so they only talk to each other, and you can't have a student or employee or someone just walking by that picks up your Wi-Fi connecting to all your IT devices if they're on their own separate network. Secure the network, right? That goes back to the Wi-Fi security. If you have it secure, then one, if they do actually compromise something, there's less that that they can do. And then two, if they can't get into your network, they can't take advantage of devices that are easy to take advantage of on your network. And then make sure these are this is probably a much bigger company size stuff, but I've seen Amazon have services like this where basically you can have the Amazon do the authentication for you, right? So you send the information up to Amazon, and then Amazon will authenticate or do anything else that it needs to do, and then that will give you that extra level of protection for that, right? Is this cloud-based authentication security for you, right? And so also consider other security tools that are out there, and then figure out what the IoT devices are using, right? Are they using different ports? Are they using different IP addresses, right? What are they doing on the network, and how can you secure that, right? Maybe they have something going over a certain port, but there's only a certain type of data going over that port, so you can track to see if something happens that shouldn't happen. And these are, again, more security ideas to think about, especially when it comes to networks and problems you might have on a network. So with that, that is the end of this lesson. We'll see you next lesson.